Hey there, MMA fans! I'm about to share some incredible stories from the world of UFC. We're talking about big fights, huge wins, and fighters who made history. From Eddie Alvarez taking on Conor McGregor to Germaine de Randamie's championship win, these tales are all about the drama and excitement of MMA. Get ready for some jaw-dropping moments in the Octagon. Eddie Alvarez. Let me take you back to a big moment in the world of MMA. We're talking about Eddie Alvarez, a tough fighter who took on the challenge to become the UFC lightweight champion. At the time, the #1 contender in the lightweight division was Khabib Nurmagomedov. The UFC even sent him contracts for a title fight at two different events, UFC 205 and UFC 206. Rumors started swirling that Conor McGregor, the UFC featherweight champion, might also want a shot at the lightweight title. This got everyone talking, and it seemed like Conor McGregor might steal the spotlight from all the other lightweight contenders. Eddie Alvarez had his eyes on a big fight too, and he believed that Conor McGregor was the best matchup for him. He thought their styles would make for an exciting fight. And just like that, the UFC made an announcement that Eddie Alvarez would defend his UFC lightweight title against Conor McGregor in the main event at UFC 205. It was a huge deal. On November 12, 2016, at UFC 205, history was made. Conor McGregor, the fighter known for his knockout power and charisma, faced Eddie Alvarez in the Octagon. The stakes were high because Conor was already the UFC featherweight champion, and he aimed to add another title to his collection. The fight began, and it was clear that both fighters meant business. Eddie Alvarez and Conor McGregor were throwing punches and kicks, trying to outsmart each other. But Conor's striking was on point, and in the second round, he landed some heavy shots that had Eddie Alvarez in trouble. It was a TKO victory for Conor McGregor in the second round, and that made him the first fighter ever to hold two UFC titles at the same time. The crowd went wild, and Conor's dream had come true. He was now the UFC lightweight champion on top of being the featherweight champion. This fight was historic not just for Conor McGregor but for the entire MMA world. 2 belts, 1 fighter, that's something we might not see again for a long time. It showed that dreams can come true in the world of MMA, and Conor McGregor's name was etched in the record books. So, there you have it folks, the story of how Conor McGregor faced Eddie Alvarez at UFC 205 and became the first fighter ever to hold 2 UFC titles simultaneously. It was a night to remember in the MMA history books. Conor McGregor. Let me tell you about a quick and dramatic fight in the world of MMA. Conor McGregor, known for his lightning-fast victories, faced Jose Aldo for the UFC featherweight championship. At the time, Conor was on the rise and had his sights set on the featherweight title. He was up against Jose Aldo, the reigning champion. Frankie Edgar, with an impressive winning streak, was waiting in line as the top contender. Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo were set to collide at UFC 194. People were eager to see if Conor's big talk would turn into big action. The fight was hyped up and everyone was excited. Now here's where it gets crazy. The fight lasted just 13 seconds. Yes, you heard that right. 13 seconds. Conor McGregor threw a lightning-fast punch and boom, it connected with Jose Aldo's chin. Jose went down and the referee had to step in. It was a knockout and Conor McGregor became the new UFC featherweight champion. Frankie Edgar, who was next in line, must have been shocked at how fast it all went down. He had been hoping for a shot at Conor and it looked like a great matchup. But Conor had other plans. Conor McGregor, after winning the featherweight title, wanted to go after the UFC lightweight title as well. That meant his first title defense should have been against Frankie Edgar. It would have been fascinating to see how Conor would handle Frankie's relentless fighting style. However, things took a different turn. Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar were paired up for an interim UFC featherweight title fight at UFC 200. The winner of this fight was supposed to face Conor McGregor in an exciting unification match later on. In their fight, Jose Aldo put on a clinic. He outclassed Frankie Edgar with his skills and strategy, securing a unanimous decision victory. This meant Jose Aldo would hold the interim featherweight title and was in line for a rematch with Conor McGregor. So, that's the story of how Conor McGregor stunned the world by knocking out Jose Aldo in just 13 seconds to become the UFC featherweight champion. It left Frankie Edgar waiting for his shot, and the MMA world buzzing with excitement. MMA can be unpredictable, and this fight was a prime example of that. Michael Bisping. Let's dive into a memorable moment in MMA history when Michael Bisping, a British fighter, pulled off a stunning victory. This was a battle for the UFC middleweight championship, and it took place at UFC 199. Now, Michael Bisping was no stranger to the fight game, but he faced a tough opponent in Luke Rockhold, who was the reigning middleweight champion. Luke was a skilled fighter and he had beaten Michael in a previous fight. But on this night, something incredible happened. Michael Bisping came into the octagon with a fire in his belly, and he meant business. The fight started, and to everyone's shock, Michael knocked out Luke Rockhold in the very first round. It happened so fast that you could hardly blink. Michael landed a powerful punch that sent Luke crashing to the canvas. The referee had no choice but to step in and call the fight. Michael Bisping was declared the winner, and he became the new UFC middleweight champion of the world. Now, let's talk about the next contender in line. Jacare Souza was making waves in the middleweight division. He had just defeated Vitor Belfort with a TKO in the first round at UFC 198. Many thought he would be the one to challenge Michael Bisping for the title. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of facing Jacare Souza, Michael Bisping decided to have a rematch with Dan Henderson at UFC 204. Dan Henderson was a legendary fighter, and the two had a history. Michael went on to win that fight by unanimous decision, defending his title, Yoel Romero. The next contender in line was Yoel Romero, a powerful fighter known for his brutal knockouts. He had recently knocked out former champion Chris Weidman at UFC 205. It was clear that Yoel was a serious threat to Michael's title. However, Michael Bisping had different plans. He was more interested in fighting Georges St. Pierre, also known as GSP, who had been out of action for 3 years. The MMA world was buzzing with excitement when it was announced that Michael Bisping would face GSP. But just a few weeks later, the fight with GSP was cancelled. GSP needed more time to prepare for the bout, and Michael Bisping was recovering from a knee injury. This turn of events left the middleweight division in a bit of uncertainty. To address this, the UFC decided to book an interim title fight between Yoel Romero and Robert Whittaker at UFC 213. This meant that the winner of this fight would hold the interim middleweight title until Michael Bisping and GSP could settle their business. So, there you have it, a roller coaster ride in the middleweight division. Michael Bisping's shocking knockout of Luke Rockhold, the rise of contenders like Jacare Souza and Yoel Romero, and the twist with the GSP fight all added drama and excitement to the world of MMA. It just goes to show that in MMA, anything can happen, and we can't wait to see how it all unfolds. Germaine de Randamie. Let's talk about a significant moment in women's MMA when Germaine de Randamie, also known as the Iron Lady, made history. This happened at UFC 208, where she faced Holly Holm for the inaugural UFC Women's Featherweight Championship. Now, Germaine de Randamie and Holly Holm were both highly skilled fighters, and the stakes were high. The winner of this fight would become the first ever UFC Women's Featherweight Champion of the world. The battle was intense, with both fighters giving their all. They went toe-to-toe, trading punches and kicks, and it was a treat for MMA fans. After 5 rounds of hard-fought action, the judges made their decision. Germaine de Randamie was declared the winner by unanimous decision. She had done it. She became the champion. Now, here comes the interesting part. The next top contender in line was none other than Cris Cyborg, a fierce fighter from Invicta FC. Cris Cyborg was known for her devastating knockout power and had been dominating her opponents. To set up a potential showdown, Cris Cyborg had even fought in the UFC at a catchweight of 140 pounds, where she defeated Leslie Smith and Lena Landsberg. After Germaine de Randamie's victory at UFC 208, Joe Rogan, in the post-fight interview, asked her about facing Cris Cyborg in the future. Germaine didn't back down. She accepted the challenge and agreed to face Cyborg at a later date. However, things took a turn. Germaine de Randamie mentioned that she needed surgery on her hands, which raised some eyebrows. Some people thought she might be making excuses to avoid the fight with Cyborg. Fast forward to more recent times, Germaine de Randamie made a surprising decision. She refused to fight Cris Cyborg and openly stated that Cyborg was a proven cheater. She even went as far as saying she'd rather have the UFC strip her of the belt. Instead, Germaine expressed her desire to return to the bantamweight division. Now, the big question is whether the UFC should punish Germaine de Randamie for not taking the fight against Cris Cyborg. It's a topic of debate among MMA fans. Some argue that as a champion she should face the top contenders, while others understand her concerns about Cyborg's past drug test issues. In the world of MMA, fighters and fans have different opinions, and these situations can be complicated. It's up to the UFC to decide how to handle this situation and whether any action should be taken against Germaine de Randamie. So there you have it, a twist in the women's featherweight division. Germaine de Randamie's historic win, the potential fight with Chris Cyborg, the surgery, and the decision to return to bantamweight have all added intrigue to the story. MMA always keeps us guessing, and we'll have to see what the future holds for these fighters and the division. And that wraps up our journey through some unforgettable UFC moments. From stunning knockouts to championship glory, these stories show just how thrilling MMA can be. Whether you're a longtime fan or new to the sport, there's always something exciting happening in the UFC. Keep watching for more epic battles and surprise twists in the world of MMA.